Every day after school, the same scene unfolded, street dog Max following 6-year-old Tommy, and his mother Linda chasing the dog away. "Get away from my child, you dirty dog," she would yell. But Linda didn't know that Max was trying to protect Tommy from a dangerous man lurking in their neighborhood. When she learned the truth, it was almost too late. Lincoln Elementary School buzzed with the familiar chaos of dismissal time. At exactly 3:30 p.m., the final bell would ring, releasing a flood of excited children into the bright afternoon sunshine. Parents lined the sidewalk, holding car keys and backpacks, scanning the crowd for familiar faces. Linda Martinez stood near the school's main entrance, her dark brown hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, her blue eyes constantly moving as she searched for her son. At 32, Linda was a single mother who worked double shifts at a local diner to support her small family. Every day brought new challenges, but picking up Tommy from school was the highlight of her routine. "Mommy! Mommy!" came the familiar voice that never failed to make Linda smile. Tommy Martinez burst through the school doors like a small hurricane, his Batman backpack bouncing against his thin frame. At 6 years old, he was small for his age but compensated with boundless energy and curiosity. His black hair stuck up in every direction, and his brown eyes sparkled with the kind of mischief that kept Linda constantly on her toes. "How was school today, mi amor?" Linda asked, kneeling down to catch Tommy in his daily flying hug. "Mrs. Peterson let me feed the class hamster, and I got a gold star on my math worksheet, and Jason said his dad is going to teach us how to play soccer this weekend." Tommy's words tumbled out in an excited rush. Linda laughed, smoothing down his unruly hair. "Slow down, baby. Tell me on the way home." But their conversation was interrupted, as it had been every day for the past 3 weeks, by the appearance of a medium-sized mixed-breed dog emerging from behind a parked car. The dog's coat was a striking mixture of brown, black, and white patches, clearly showing German Shepherd and Labrador ancestry. His ears stood alert, and his dark brown eyes seemed to take in everything around him with unusual intelligence. "Oh, not again," Linda muttered under her breath as she spotted Max approaching. Max had appeared in their neighborhood about a month ago, and no one knew where he had come from. He was clearly a stray, no collar, no tags, and the lean build of an animal that had learned to fend for himself on the streets. But unlike most stray dogs, Max seemed to have a very specific interest: Tommy Martinez. "Shoo! Get out of here!" Linda called out, waving her arms at Max. "Go on, get." But Max didn't retreat. Instead, he fell into step behind Linda and Tommy as they began their 3-block walk home, maintaining a respectful distance but never letting them out of his sight. The pattern continued day after day, and Linda's frustration grew with each encounter. Max would appear at dismissal time, follow them home, and then spend hours prowling around their neighborhood. Linda began to feel like she was being stalked by a 4-legged shadow. "I don't understand why that dog keeps bothering us," Linda complained to her neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, as they chatted over the fence between their backyards. Elena Rodriguez was a woman in her 50s with the kind of wisdom that came from raising 6 children and fostering countless stray animals over the years. She had been watching the situation between Linda and Max with growing interest. "Mija, that dog doesn't look aggressive to me," Elena said, glancing toward the street where Max could occasionally be spotted making his rounds. "Maybe he just likes your boy." "That's exactly what I'm afraid of," Linda replied sharply. "Stray dogs are unpredictable. They carry diseases. They can turn violent without warning. I won't have Tommy put at risk by some mangy street animal." Elena frowned slightly. "Have you seen him show any signs of aggression? Has he ever snapped or growled?" Linda paused, realizing she hadn't actually witnessed any threatening behavior from Max. "Well, no, but that doesn't mean anything. He's still a stray dog following my child." Tommy, who had been listening from the back porch, piped up, "Mommy, Max is nice. He never tries to bite me or anything. I think he just wants to be my friend." "Tommy, don't you dare go near that dog," Linda said firmly. "I mean it. Stray animals are dangerous, and I won't have you getting hurt." But even as she spoke, Linda couldn't shake the feeling that there was something different about Max. Unlike other stray dogs she had encountered, Max seemed purposeful rather than desperate, alert rather than fearful. As the weeks passed, Linda began to pay closer attention to Max's behavior patterns. The dog didn't just follow them home and disappear, he seemed to have established a regular patrol route that centered around their house and Tommy's daily activities. In the early morning, Linda would sometimes spot Max from her kitchen window, sitting perfectly still in the small park across the street, his gaze focused on their front door. During Tommy's afternoon playtime in their fenced backyard, Max would position himself where he could see through the fence slats. And late at night, when Linda checked the locks before bed, she would occasionally see a familiar silhouette moving through the shadows of their neighborhood. "This has gone on long enough," Linda declared after spotting Max in their yard for the third time in 1 week. She picked up the phone and dialed the city's animal control services. "We've got a stray dog that's been harassing my family," she explained to the dispatcher. "He follows my son home from school every day and won't leave us alone." The animal control officer who responded to the call was a patient man named Dave Morrison who had been dealing with stray animals for over 15 years. He arrived with a humane trap and a calm demeanor. "Can you point out this dog to me, ma'am?" he asked, scanning the empty street. Linda looked around, confused. Max was nowhere to be seen. "He was just here 20 minutes ago. He's always here." Dave set up the trap anyway and left it overnight, but the next morning it remained empty. Max had somehow known to avoid the area entirely while the trap was present. "Smart dog," Dave commented when he returned to collect the unused equipment. A lot of strays develop good instincts about when to lay low. 8-year-old Sofia Hernandez, who lived 2 doors down from the Martinez family, had been watching the whole scene from her front porch. After Dave left, she approached Tommy with the confidence of someone who had been observing Max longer than anyone else. "My big brother Carlos says that Max is special," she told Tommy in a whisper. "Carlos thinks he used to be a police dog or something, because he always knows stuff before other people do." On a warm Wednesday afternoon, Linda and Tommy were walking home from their weekly grocery shopping trip, both carrying small bags of essentials. The familiar weight of responsibility sat heavy on Linda's shoulders, every purchase carefully calculated against their tight budget, every decision measured against Tommy's needs. They were 2 blocks from home when Linda noticed a man standing across the street, partially concealed by a large oak tree. The man appeared to be in his 50s, tall and thin with unkempt gray hair and clothes that suggested he didn't have a permanent address. What made Linda's stomach tighten with unease was the way he was staring directly at Tommy. The man's gaze was intense and focused, following Tommy's movements with an attention that felt predatory rather than casual. Linda instinctively moved closer to her son, her maternal instincts setting off alarm bells. At that exact moment, Max appeared seemingly from nowhere, positioning himself directly between Tommy and the stranger across the street. The dog's posture was completely different from his usual calm demeanor, his body was tense, his ears forward, and a low, almost inaudible growl rumbled from deep in his chest. "Max, get away from us," Linda said automatically, but her voice lacked its usual conviction. Something about the dog's behavior struck her as protective rather than threatening. The stranger, upon seeing Max's alert stance and hearing the subtle growl, quickly turned and walked away, disappearing around the corner with hurried steps. Linda stood on the sidewalk for a long moment, processing what had just happened. Was it coincidence that the uncomfortable stranger had left immediately after Max appeared? Or had the dog somehow sensed something that she had missed? Max remained alert until the man was completely out of sight, then resumed his normal, calm demeanor as if nothing had happened. "Mommy, why did that man look at me like that?" Tommy asked, his voice small and uncertain. Linda knelt down to Tommy's level, trying to keep her own anxiety out of her voice. Some people just look at things differently, baby. But we're safe now. As they continued home, Linda found herself glancing back over her shoulder, and she noticed that Max was doing the same thing. Over the following days, Linda began to notice things she had previously dismissed. The same stranger seemed to appear in their neighborhood with disturbing frequency. She spotted him near the school playground during recess, lingering outside the community center where Tommy attended after-school programs, and walking past their house at odd hours. Each time Linda saw the man, she felt a chill of recognition. There was something predatory in his behavior, something that set off every protective instinct she possessed as a mother. And each time the stranger appeared, Max seemed to materialize as well, always positioning himself as a barrier between the man and Tommy. The dog's behavior was becoming impossible to ignore or dismiss as mere coincidence. Linda began to keep a mental record of the incidents. Monday morning, stranger seen watching the school playground during drop-off. Max appeared and sat directly in the man's line of sight until he left. Tuesday afternoon, man spotted near the ice cream truck where children gathered after school. Max approached and remained alert until the stranger moved away. Wednesday evening, stranger walking slowly past their house during Tommy's outdoor play time. Max positioned himself at the edge of their yard, never taking his eyes off the man until he was gone. Elena, Linda said to her neighbor during one of their fence-line conversations, "I think I owe that dog an apology." Elena looked surprised. "What changed your mind, Mija?" Linda explained her observations about the strange man and Max's consistent protective responses. "I think Max has been trying to tell us something, and I've been too stubborn to listen." "Animals have instincts we don't," Elena agreed. "Maybe this dog knows something about that man that we need to pay attention to." That night, Linda found herself looking out her bedroom window at 2 a.m., and there was Max, sitting vigilantly in front of their house like a four-legged security guard. For the first time, instead of feeling annoyed, Linda felt grateful. Friday started like any other day, but it would end as the most frightening day of Linda's life. She had planned to leave work early to pick up Tommy for a special afternoon at the park, a small treat to celebrate his improvement in reading. But when Linda arrived at Lincoln Elementary at 2:45 p.m., 15 minutes before the usual dismissal time, Tommy was nowhere to be found. "Mrs. Martinez?" Miss Garcia, Tommy's first-grade teacher, approached with a confused expression. "Tommy said you were picking him up early today, so I released him to the office about an hour ago." Linda's blood turned to ice. "I never sent word that I was coming early." "Where is he?" The school secretary, Mrs. Patterson, checked her records with growing concern. "There's no note here about early pickup, and no one signed Tommy out through our office." Within minutes, Linda was running through the school building, calling Tommy's name with increasing desperation. The principal, Mr. Davidson, immediately implemented the school's lockdown procedure and called the police. "Tommy! Tommy!" Linda screamed as she burst through the school's main doors into the parking lot. And then she saw Max. The dog was pacing frantically near the school's side entrance, whining and barking in a way Linda had never heard before. When Max saw Linda, he ran directly to her, then turned and ran toward the street, looking back as if urging her to follow. "Where is he, Max?" Linda asked desperately, her rational mind barely functioning under the weight of terror. "Where's Tommy?" Max barked once, sharply, then took off running down the street. Linda followed without hesitation, her heart pounding as she realized she was trusting a stray dog to lead her to her missing son. Max led Linda 6 blocks from the school, through a residential area she rarely visited, toward an abandoned industrial section of town. The dog moved with purpose and urgency, occasionally stopping to ensure Linda was still following, but never slowing his pace. They reached a rundown warehouse building with broken windows and a rusted chain-link fence. Max immediately ran to a side entrance and began scratching at the door, whining with obvious distress. From inside the building, Linda heard the most beautiful sound in the world, Tommy's voice. "Help! Somebody help me! I want my mommy!" Linda's hands shook as she dialed 911, whispering her location to the dispatcher while trying to stay calm enough to think clearly. My 6-year-old son is trapped inside this building. Please send help immediately. Mommy. Is that you? Tommy's voice came through the door, filled with terror and hope. I'm here, baby. Mommy's here. The police are coming. Linda could hear another voice inside, an adult male speaking in low, urgent tones. The stranger from the neighborhood was in there with her son, and Linda felt a rage more powerful than any fear she had ever experienced. Max seemed to sense her emotional state. The dog positioned himself at the door, his body coiled with tension, ready to spring into action the moment an opportunity presented itself. When the police arrived 3 minutes later, they found Linda crouched by the door with Max standing guard beside her. The dog's protective stance and obvious distress helped officers understand immediately that this was not a false alarm. Tommy Martinez, this is the police. Officer Williams called through the door. We're here to help you. The door opened slightly, and a desperate-looking man peered out, the same stranger who had been stalking Tommy for weeks. When he saw the police, he tried to slam the door shut, but Max was faster. The dog launched himself at the door with incredible force, knocking the man backward and creating enough space for the officers to enter. Within seconds, they had the suspect in custody and Tommy was running into Linda's arms. At the police station, Detective Sarah Williams explained to Linda what they had learned about Tommy's would-be abductor. His name is Robert Chin, and he has a history of child endangerment charges, Detective Williams said, her voice grave. He's been out on parole for 6 months, and it appears he's been targeting children in this neighborhood for several weeks. Linda felt sick. How long was he watching Tommy? Based on what we've gathered, probably since the beginning of the school year. He had detailed information about Tommy's schedule, his routes to and from school, even his favorite activities. But how did Max know? Linda asked, still struggling to process everything that had happened. Detective Williams smiled slightly. Mrs. Martinez, that dog probably saved your son's life today. Animals, especially dogs with protection training, can sense predatory behavior in humans. Max was trying to warn you about Chen long before any of us recognized the threat. The detective pulled out a folder with photos and documents. We've been tracking Chen since his release, but he's been very careful to stay within the bounds of his parole. Having your dog lead us to Tommy gave us the evidence we needed to put him back behind bars. Linda looked out the police station window, where Max was waiting patiently in the parking lot. Officer Williams had given him water and some food, and several officers had taken turns sitting with him to keep him calm. What happens to Max now? Linda asked. That's up to you, Detective Williams replied. But if I were you, I'd want that dog on my team permanently. Linda found Max sitting calmly beside Officer Williams' patrol car, as if he knew his job wasn't finished until Tommy was safely back with his family. When he saw Linda approaching, his tail began to wag, but his expression remained serious and alert. Max, Linda said, kneeling down in front of the dog, I owe you the biggest apology of my life. Max tilted his head, his intelligent eyes seeming to understand every word. You were trying to protect Tommy from that terrible man, and I kept chasing you away. I thought you were the danger, when really you were the only one trying to keep us safe. Linda reached out her hand, and for the first time, Max allowed her to pet him. His fur was softer than she had expected, and she could feel the solid muscle beneath his coat that spoke of strength and capability. Tommy came running out of the police station with a juice box and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. The trauma of his experience was evident, but his natural resilience was already beginning to shine through. Mommy, did you tell Max thank you? Tommy asked, immediately dropping to his knees beside the dog. He saved me from the scary man. Yes, baby, I told him. And I asked him if he wants to come home with us. Tommy's eyes widened with excitement. Can he? Can Max live with us? Linda looked at Max, who was calmly accepting Tommy's enthusiastic petting while maintaining his watchful awareness of their surroundings. I think Max has already decided he's part of our family. We just need to make it official. The first stop was Dr. Rodriguez's veterinary clinic for a complete health check and vaccination update. Dr. Rodriguez was a bilingual veterinarian who had been serving their community for over 20 years. "This is a very special dog," Dr. Rodriguez said after completing his examination. "He's in excellent health, appears to be about 4 years old, and has definitely had professional training at some point." "What kind of training?" Linda asked. "Hard to say for certain, but his muscle development and behavioral responses suggest he may have been a working dog, possibly security or law enforcement. He's been well cared for at some point in his life." Dr. Rodriguez recommended a gradual integration process to help Max adjust to indoor living, though he suspected the transition would be smoother than most rescue situations. "Dogs like Max don't usually end up on the streets by choice," he explained. "There's probably a story there, maybe his handler retired, moved away, or passed away. Sometimes excellent dogs fall through the cracks of the system." Linda didn't care about Max's past. What mattered was his future with their family. The paperwork for Max's adoption was completed within a week. Linda registered him with the city, purchased a collar with ID tags, and set up a comfortable sleeping area in Tommy's room. But Max had his own ideas about sleeping arrangements. Every night, he positioned himself at the front door, maintaining his protective watch over the house and family he had chosen to guard. Word of Max's heroic rescue spread quickly through their community. The local newspaper picked up the story, running it with the headline, "Street Dog's Instincts Save Child from Abduction." Elena Rodriguez was the first to stop by with a welcome gift for Max, a high-quality leather collar with his name engraved on a brass plate. "I always knew that dog was special," she said, scratching behind Max's ears. Other neighbors began sharing their own observations about Max's behavior over the previous weeks. Mrs. Chen from 2 streets over mentioned seeing Max following her granddaughter home from school. Mr. Patterson reported that Max had growled at a stranger who had been asking questions about local children. Max wasn't just protecting Tommy, Linda realized. He was protecting all the kids in the neighborhood. Tommy became something of a celebrity at school, proudly telling anyone who would listen about his super dog, who had saved him from the bad man. His teacher, Miss Garcia, even arranged for Max to visit the classroom as part of a lesson about community helpers. "Not all heroes wear capes," Tommy announced to his classmates during the presentation. "Some heroes have 4 legs and really good hearing." The children were fascinated by Max's calm demeanor and obvious intelligence. The dog seemed to understand that he was in a classroom setting and behaved accordingly, allowing the children to pet him while maintaining his characteristic alertness. 6 months later, Max had fully integrated into the Martinez household, though traces of his mysterious past remained evident in his behavior. He still conducted regular patrols of their neighborhood, always alert for potential threats. But now these protective rounds were balanced with the simple joys of being a family dog. Max learned to play fetch with Tommy in their backyard, though even during play, he never completely relaxed his vigilance. He developed a fondness for sleeping on the cool kitchen tiles during hot summer afternoons, but always positioned where he could see both the front and back entrances to the house. Linda often found herself watching Max and marveling at the journey that had brought him into their lives. The dog she had once considered a nuisance had become Tommy's closest companion and her own trusted guardian. "You know what I think?" Tommy said one evening as he brushed Max's coat on the living room floor. "I think Max was looking for a family that needed protecting, and he found us." Linda smiled, watching her son's gentle interaction with the dog who had become so much more than a pet. "I think you're right, mi amor. And I think we were very lucky that Max chose us." Max looked up at the sound of his name, his tail wagging with contentment. Whatever his life had been before he found the Martinez family, he had clearly decided that this was where he belonged. Detective Williams stopped by occasionally to check on Tommy's recovery and to update Linda on Robert Chen's case. During one such visit, she mentioned that the police department was considering implementing a program to train officers to recognize and utilize the protective instincts of community animals. Max's story opened our eyes to something we hadn't fully appreciated before, she explained. Animals see things we miss. They pick up on behavioral cues that humans might dismiss or overlook. As Detective Williams prepared to leave, Max walked her to the door with the same polite attention he showed to all visitors. His demeanor was friendly but professional, as if he understood his role as both family pet and neighborhood guardian. 2 years after Max's heroic rescue of Tommy, the Martinez family had settled into a rhythm that accommodated both Max's protective nature and their need for a normal family life. Tommy, now 8 years old, had grown into a confident, security-conscious child who understood both the importance of staying alert and the comfort of knowing Max was always watching over him. Linda had been promoted to assistant manager at the diner, an advancement she attributed partly to the peace of mind that came from knowing Tommy was never truly alone as long as Max was around. Her stress levels had decreased significantly, allowing her to focus on work and personal growth in ways that had been impossible when she was constantly worried about her son's safety. Max continued his neighborhood patrols, but they had evolved from urgent surveillance missions into comfortable routine walks. He knew every regular resident, every delivery person, and every vehicle that belonged in the area. His presence had become such an accepted part of the community that children would wave to him from their windows and adults would pause their yard work to greet him by name. The mysterious circumstances of Max's arrival in their neighborhood remained unsolved, but Linda had stopped wondering about his past. What mattered was not where Max had come from, but what he had chosen to become, a protector, a companion, and a living reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary guardians come in the most unexpected forms. On quiet evenings, when Tommy was doing homework at the kitchen table and Linda was preparing dinner, Max would settle into his favorite spot near the front window, maintaining his gentle watch over the family he had claimed as his own. His vigilance was no longer born of urgent necessity, but of unwavering love and an unshakable commitment to the people who had finally recognized him for what he truly was, a hero who had never stopped believing that every child deserves to be protected, every family deserves to feel safe, and every act of courage, no matter how misunderstood, eventually finds its reward. Max's incredible story reminds us that heroes don't always announce themselves with fanfare, sometimes they appear quietly, persistently, waiting for us to recognize their true purpose. His unwavering dedication to protecting Tommy, despite being repeatedly turned away, shows us the power of unconditional love and the importance of trusting our instincts, both human and animal. What do you think about the special bond between protective animals and the children they guard? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories about the extraordinary animals who dedicate their lives to keeping us safe.